education. If you go to many schools in Nigeria today, you find that the roofs are caving in, the ceilings are virtually falling on the children. How do we expect our children to perform optimally in such environment? For children to be attracted to school, we have to provide conducive environment for learning and for teaching. We are not being fair to the generation of students and pupils in school these days. And I'm addressing the leaders generally. Most of us did not attend the type of schools that we've subjected our children to now. When we were in school some years back, we learned in conducive environments even at that time. The presenter spoke about schooling in the 60s, when Nigeria could not pride itself as giant of Africa, when we had not accessed oil, but we had decent schools. We had schools that were attractive to children to learn. We had teachers that were being trained and retrained, unlike what obtains now. For us in the state of Osun, to address the issue of infrastructural decadence, we have built over 39 schools recently, and we've provided about 1,789 classrooms. We are trying as much as possible to see that our children are attracted to school. To get them access quality education, you must attract them to school. Laboratories are non-existent in most schools. Where there are no potable water to even run the laboratories. There are several things we need to review concerning education in Nigeria. We also need to review the funding. We should place education on the front burner in Nigeria. We should introduce ICT. We should use ICT to drive education. Nigeria should be moving forward, not retrogressing. We should not be living in the previous century. If we are seriously the giants of Africa, we should entice our children to school. And it's worrisome that presently in Nigeria, over 10 million of our children are out of school. It's a thing that we should all be worried about. There are ways we can attract children to school. We can introduce the midday meal, which the federal government, through the UBEC Act in 2004, enforced all states to carry out. But as of today, I believe it's only the state of Osun that is feeding over 300,000 pupils in the primary schools. And with this, enrollment has increased. Access to education has been improved to our children. I want to rest my case because I know the chairman has been urging me to stop. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. The topic is improving access and quality of education at the subnational level. And I think it's appropriate since we're governors of federating units, not at the federal level. Because I think the number one problem that we're experiencing in education is actually the distortion that federalism, this unitary federalism that we're practicing, has brought about in the area of education, both in terms of solid education planning itself and in terms of funding processes, in terms of the curriculum that do not offer life skills because we all have to buy into a central curriculum of the National Council of Education, and also in terms of quality assurance that my brother, the chairman of the Governors Forum, has already spoken about, which was what, in our case, led us to approach it a little bit differently when I became governor in Ekiti State. I summoned a stakeholder forum of education We have a reputation of being the supposedly most educationally advanced state in Nigeria. That's what it used to be. I can tell you that it's no longer so. There's a big challenge around that. And that stakeholder forum highlighted a number of things that they felt we must do in order to address the rot in our educational system. And this is really what we've been focusing on primarily. My sister mentioned the education infrastructure. That's one of the very first things that we're focused on, totally turning around all of 183 secondary schools, 856 primary schools, some of them not touched since Chief Obafemi Awolowo actually put these schools in place 50 years ago. So you can imagine when students learn under such conditions, what you get ultimately is low quality education. We also are focused on teacher quality, and that has gotten me into some trouble, as those who read newspapers must be aware of, because I insisted that teachers in our state must undergo what we call needs assessment test. I know that it's called competency test in Adams' state now. Our own idea was really to identify what the gaps are in order for us to retrain and build the capacities of our teachers to deliver the goods appropriately to the students. And since then, we've noticed some improvement. It's not where we want it to be. I mean, when I became governor, the pass rate at our public examination, WAEC and NECO in Ekiti was 9%. And in the space of 3 years, it's moved to 70%. And I think that's primarily because there's no more automatic promotion in our state. We insist that students must not go through miracle centers. All of us know what miracle centers are, that we've demolished in the state. But ultimately, I think the solution, the grand solution to this problem, is to ensure subsidiarity in our education agenda. Because I don't see any reason why the federal government, all these schemes, UBEC, TED Fund, and all of the monies that are taken away from states and appropriated centrally really need to return to the states. That's when these issues that Governor Amici raised about local government incapacity to manage and fund education will be addressed substantially. You cannot be 1,000 miles away managing education at a local level. What the federal government should do is be in charge of the regulation. Madam Chair, let me just round up. The regulatory framework should be the business of the federal government, not the implementation agenda, which should be at the lower level of the education planning program in various states. But finally, there is a direct correlation between the low quality of education and insecurity that we're dealing with in the country. And unless we take an integrated, holistic approach to it, we're not going to resolve all these problems that we're talking about. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I wish I had the stamina of my Lord Justice Akombi. But I think your contributions are all very, 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 very useful, necessary. Yes, I know. I'm coming, sir. After all, you are a host. I couldn't possibly overlook that. But the first thing is this law, and most things come around that. And in spite of going back to the fact of feeding our children in school, we go back to our question of poverty. And when we go back to the funding of structures and what structures should be kept at the local level and what are really necessary at the tertiary level, we shall have many changing opinions. But it is a useful thing for us to reconsider